Limbus Company is a turn-based gacha game. From the first time that I played it, it got me hooked onto it instantly. And, to be honest, it has me in a chokehold where I fangirl over every single final boss fight of each kanto. But why? Well, Limbus Company is different, and I mean way different than any other gacha games I've played. In the landscape of games that basically spit out characters every month and releases awfully priced skins, Limbus Company is only a gacha game because the developers needed to continue support for the story and type of game they had in mind. It has really good gacha rates compared to other games in the genre. In fact, they're so good that you only really need to be a little lucky to get, so you can basically get any character you want. Now, this video will be pretty all over the place if I didn't have any kind of plan on how to organize it, so I'll make the video in segments, each called a kanto, which is the name of each chapter in the game. So, here we go! Limbus Company is a turn-based game, but when it isn't a turn-based game, it's pretty much a visual novel, and a really good one at that. The only audio language is South Korean, which some people might find hard to get used to at first, but the voice actors are incredible, and they really know how to bring the emotion of the moment onto each part. Now, as a turn-based game, Limbus Company is, to be fair, difficult to judge. The model that the turn-based mechanics are based around is a modified version of what they decided to do for their other game called Library of Ruina, which is also a must-play, set in the same universe, but we're covering Limbus Company in this video, so I'll only cover superficially the gameplay. If you need to actually know every single bit on how the turn-based mechanics work, please check out other YouTube videos that are made from people that have way more experience than I do. So, the combat is based around skills, defense skills, sanity, status effects, sin, ego, and stagger. So, it's time to explain how to, kinda, play Limbus Company. So, skills. Identities normally have 3 skills. Keep in mind that the third skill is unlocked after uptying an identity to 3, which we will refer to as levels. And the maximum level of uptime is level 4. And they also have a defense skill on top of 1 or 2 passives, which are normally unlocked at level 2 uptime. Sometimes they even have 3 passives. Skills have 6 mainly important things that you need to keep in mind: base power, coin amount, skill amount, attack type, and sin affinity. So let's go over them quickly and in an easy way to understand. First off, we have base power. This decides what your base clash power is. So for example, if you get absolutely done dirty and you get no heads on your skill, assuming that is a skill that requires positive SP, this will be the only thing you have to clash against enemies, and it's really not ideal. Second off, we have coin power. Coin power refers to the amount of clash power that is added to your base power. If you end up getting heads for the positive SP skills, or tails for negative SP skills, this will help a lot of your clashes to be a lot fairer, so it is pretty important to have in mind. Now, third off, we have coin amount. This is how many coins your skill has, and I have to do a little explaining here. Each coin has a chance depending on sanity, whether it lands on tails, which for most identities or IDs means more damage and maybe some status effects, or if it's tails, which for most IDs is just not good, since status effects and damage won't happen, but for negative SP IDs it is very beneficial to land on tails. Hitting heads adds a lot of coin power to your base power. Now, whether you get heads or tails depends on your sanity. Sanity is a stat that normally starts at 0, and every time you win or lose clashes it can go up or down. If you keep winning clashes, it'll max out at 45, and if you lose it goes down to minus 45. Having maximum sanity is important for most identities, as it means you'll keep getting heads and not tails. Now, fourth off, we have skill amount. This is the amount of times that a skill will be available. Basically, how lucky do you need to get to find that skill once more. Of course, for skill 2 and skill 3, the amount is different due to the skills generally being stronger. The fifth thing that I need to explain is attack type. Now, your skills can have a type of attack, and it can be one of 3, either slash, pierce, or blunt. This is, in my opinion, a bit more important than sin, because you can take either 0.5 times damage or 1.5 times damage from attacks, which makes it a bit more thoughtful in how you build your team, even if it doesn't matter much if you just don't get hit, aka getting a lucky clash. Egos will be explained later, but they also have an attack type. Next on, we have sin affinity. This indicates what sin your skill is, and for more directions on that, just wait until I start explaining about sin. since it'll be a bit more better if I explain it later on than right now. Now for the final thing that I need to explain, we have sanity or SP. Basically, as said previously, this is a very important element of playing Limbus Company. The normal rule for IDs is that when you win a clash, you gain 10 SP, to a maximum of 45 SP. And if you lose a clash, you normally lose around 10 SP. Now, there are IDs that work best with negative SP. In other words, their skills work best when hitting tails. Of course, this isn't a huge amount of IDs, but enough to keep in mind. But, how do you actually know if you win or not if you don't want to check and do the math? Well, the game very easily shows you at the top and middle of the screen whether your clash is hopeless, struggling, neutral, favored or dominating. So you know in a second where you'll be like, I'm fucked, or nah, I'm not worried. But the thing is, while your chances of getting hits are around 50% at 0 sanity, or SP for short, at 45 sanity it's only 95%, which means that while it's practically impossible to get tails, you can still get tails. As for negative sanity, if you reach minus 45 SP, you get in a state of panic, in which either your identity does nothing or attacks someone indiscriminately. And if you have other egos equipped to your ID that aren't just the basic one, your ID will come corroded, which one of the egos that were closer to the corrosion, and it basically means the same thing as being panicked, as if the character always attacks indiscriminately, it will attack a teammate, which, if they do, they are most likely dead or ready to get staggered and then die. So, on to the next thing, status effects. Now this will be short, probably not. Okay, either way, IDs can have various status effects. Normally, IDs are only given a single status effect to apply or play around, which can be stacked and have counts. So to explain all of them, quote unquote, quickly, Burn. At the end of the turn does fits damage depending on the stack, which means that if the enemy has 30 burn stacks on it, it'll deal 30 fits damage to the enemy. Counts on the status effects means for how many turns the burn will last, so if it has 2 counts, it'll deal 30 fits damage once the turn ends, and then the next turn it'll deal another 30 fits damage, and it'll disappear if it doesn't get another count before it ends. In other words, damn, I'm left at 20 HP, I sure hope that. Bleed. When the enemy attacks, it'll deal fits damage, so if the enemy has 15 bleed stacks and 5 counts, for 5 attacks that the enemy does, it'll take 15 fits damage, so at the end of those 5 attacks, it'll end up taking a maximum of 75 fits damage. It isn't necessary to attack, as only doing goblet flips will make the bleed proc. Basically, ha! I got you now! Tremor. It normally raises the stagger threshold of the enemy, so if the enemy gets staggered at let's say 140 HP, then it'll raise that number depending on the stack of stagger. So if the enemy has 20 stacks, it'll raise the stagger threshold to 160 HP. But, and this is a big but, you can only do this if you use a skill that deals Tremor Burst. So that's an important thing to have in mind, which means that only Tremor Burst can proc the status effect. Basically, hey. Rupture. Once an AD hits the enemy, it'll deal fits damage depending on the stacks that the enemy has. After each hit, the count goes down. So if you manage to get 99 stacks and 50 count on the enemy, for quite literally 50 hits that the enemy takes, which keep in mind the damage your skill does is still there, it'll end up by the end of those 50 hits, have dealt a maximum of 4,950 damage to the enemy. Basically. Okay, come on, I'm not that yet! Sinking. For each hit that the ID does to an enemy, it'll lower their sanity. If they don't have sanity, aka abnormalities, it'll just deal fits damage depending on the stack like Rupture. Once again, counts go down based on how much the enemy is hit. Basically. I'm sad now. I'll kill! Poise. This status effect increases your damage via critical hits that deal 20% of what your skill would normally deal. So the crit procs depending on how much your stack is, since the math is stack times 5%. Once a crit procs, the count will go down. Basically, critical hit! And finally we have charge. It really depends on your ID, as most IDs have a maximum stack of 20, and either spend counts for special passives, skills, or more. Some IDs after getting to 20 will restart the stack and add a count. So it depends on the ID that you use. make sure to pay attention to passive or skills that the ID has. Basically, yeah, this is my true power! There are special versions of each status effect that only some IDs can apply to themselves or to the enemy. I won't explain this since it would take way longer, so if you get an ID that has a special kind of status effect, make sure to look deep into what it does, so you understand how to make your team, and on top of this, keep in mind that all of these status effects mentioned previously can be applied to you, or the enemies can apply to themselves, like in the case of charge or poise. Now, the next thing that I need to explain are Sin. Sin are basically your attack quote-unquote type, as in it's not really the type of attack you do, but element in a sense. Your skills can have one of 7 total sins. These are Wrath, which is associated with Burn, Lust, which is associated with Bleed, Sloth, which is associated with Tremor, Gluttony, which is associated with Rupture, Gloom, which is associated with Sinking, Pride, which is associated with Poise, and Envy, which is associated with Charge. While they aren't as important, it's also nice to keep in mind enemies' vulnerabilities, which includes that they can take, for example, 0.75 times damage from Gloom, or they can even take 2 times damage from Wrath, so your attack damage could be basically subtracted or multiplied. Now we're on to Ego. Gameplay wise, you can consider them as some sort of super attack or something. While this isn't the only use that they have, they're also in the gacha as different drops. They can have everything we've talked about before, which is they have their own clash power, coins, sin, status effects to apply or use, and their own attack type. But keep in mind that each ego costs sanity to use. It depends on the ego, but the starting ones cost 10 sanity no matter what, which means that you'll either use ego when your normal skills can't do anything, or when you need to do a lot of damage or apply a status effect. On top of that, to use ego, you also need sin resources. You get these by using your skills, since each skill has a sin assigned to it. You get a single resource from that sin you've used. Each ego, depending on how powerful it is, will require more resources, since it has a total of 5 tiers depending on the risk level of the abnormality. They are Saiyan, Teth, He, Wow, and Aleph. By the way, those are not how you say them. Either way, as of writing this script, there are no Aleph ego as of yet. While you normally don't want to corrode egos because their attacks can be indiscriminate, which means it can attack whoever it pleases, some corrosion can do more damage even if the sanity cost is way more. This is where strategy comes into play, as you have to test if it's better to use your ego normally or to corrode it. And also, if you create your ego, aka putting it on your board, and you don't use it in that turn, the ego will take the bottom slot indefinitely until you use it. Even if you use a defense skill, it won't make the ego go away. The next one is Stagger. Now, I already talked a bit about Stagger when mentioning Tremor, but I'll explain it a little further in this segment. So, Stagger is a bit special and important. What Stagger does is that once the enemy reaches their Stagger threshold, for example if the enemy has 250 HP, let's say that their Stagger threshold is 180 HP. Once they reach that one, they'll enter a staggered state, where they cannot attack or do anything, and take 2 times damage from every single form of attack, even if they were strong against it before the stagger. Some enemies can have 2 or 3 stagger thresholds, and if in a single turn you do enough damage, that stagger can go from the normal one to stagger plus, which makes attacks do 2.5 times damage, and then a stagger plus plus, which makes attacks do 3 times damage. Stagger is a really important mechanic since in later stages, keeping in mind how close your characters are to stagger is very important whether you want to push or just wait a little bit more, to either do damage or try to save a character from getting staggered and getting absolutely melted, since yes, your characters also have stagger thresholds, at minimum 1 and at maximum 3. Okay, the littlest final thing that I need to explain are battle types. Each stage that has a battle can be one of 2 battle types, either chain battles, which means that your team has to fight through a horde of enemies, or focus battles. These battles are different because you have to choose which skill of yours will clash with which skill that the enemies have. Focus battles require you to really be paying attention to everything, even having to use your defense skill from time to time, whether you manage or not to win a clash, and not having to use sin resources to use ego. So you should decide to use your defense skill to hopefully not die. So this has been almost everything about the gameplay and battles without spoiling the more important things that will come out later. While I understand that it's bad for me to not explain every single nook and cranny, I want you, the viewer, to go ahead and download Limbus Company on Steam or the App Store or the Play Store and go through everything yourself. It is really worth it, I promise. This will keep being repeated on this video. No, it isn't a threat. Maybe. This part will hopefully not be as long as the previous part, but it'll still be useful to explain, even if it doesn't have much explaining. So, to explain the gacha, we have to first go over the characters. There are 12 characters in total, all of which I'll talk a little about in a later canto. There is Jisung, Faust, Don Quixote, Ryoshu, Mersault, Honglu, Heathcliff, Ishmael, Rodion, Sinclair, Otis, and Gregor. Now, even if this is lore, the world of Limbus Company has these mirror worlds, which are basically alternate dimensions of the world where identities are. What if instead of being recruited by Limbus Company, these characters work from another faction? Instead of getting the 56th female character with physics that aren't real, we get a different version of the character we already know. All of the identities are associated with different alliances of the world, and some of them even work together. There are even collab identities with the other games that Project Moon has made, aka Lobotomy Corporation and Library of Ruina, which works as a collab via Walpurgis Night. And there was also an Darkness collab. Now, the gacha rates are really good compared to other gachas. I'll take Genshin Impact as an example. In that game, the chance to get a 5-star character, which by the way a 5-star character is equal to a 000 ID in Limbus Company, is around like 0.8% or something. Genshin Impact has a special pity mechanic that makes it so every 70 pulls, your chances of getting a 5-star increases until 90 pulls, where you reach hard pity, and it basically becomes a 100% chance of getting the character. And in Limbus Company, the chance is 2.9%. And the chance to get an ego is 1.3%. While these numbers don't look that crazy good at first, Limbus Company gives you a shit ton of lunacy for each canto, mini canto, and mirror dungeon you complete. So when you put that into practice, you get a ton more 000 IDs than you would expect. On another note, if you have pulled 200 times in a banner, you'll be able to change idealities for either the identity you wanted or an announcer. For new players, always go for identities, since announcers are just who voices your battles, which is nice for players that already have all the units they wanted. Banners basically work the same as any other gacha game. In Limbus Company, most banners last 2 weeks, and there are normally the new identity banner and the targeted sinner banner. Basically, the new identity banner focuses in, as the name says, new identities that get released. Normally, the individual rate to get a certain 000 ID from every single one there is at the time of running the script is 0.04%, but in this, the identity is bumped up to 1.45%. Same in the targeted sinner extraction. And finally, there is the final banner, which is the standard extraction banner. This is the one where every single ID and ego is shoved into one banner, except the collab IDs and egos. What I recommend is, unless the character you see in the new identity banner fits around your team or you just want them, pull in the normal standard extraction banner. Or well, just pull in whatever banner you want. A single pull needs 130 lunacy, and a 10 pull is 1300 lunacy. You are basically guaranteed to get a 00 ID if you do a 10 pull. Now, I couldn't really fit this part in either of their segments because it is kind of both of them. So, Limbus Company's energy system, basically what other gacha games use to halt your progress and not make you able to grind non-stop every single day of your life, is Enkafallen. It is what you use to get into stages. It's important to keep in mind that only combat stages require Enkafallen spending. Things like Lost Excavation, where you can get thread to update your identities to the maximum, and identity training tickets, which is what you use to level up your identities to the maximum once again, so they don't suck complete ass. Due to the fact that each time you uptype the identity or thread spin an ego, keep in mind that uptying is for identities and thread spinning is for egos, they'll be buffed. For IDs, it'll either gain a stack for their status effects they apply, or the skill does something new. Once you reach level 3 uptie, IDs gain their 3rd skill, which means that it is pretty important to get your IDs to level 3 uptie minimum. As for egos, they also gain buffs to their normal abilities, but with the difference that at level 2, egos gain a passive, and from then on it's like I said previously, buffs or something else added up. The maximum level of both IDs and egos is level 4, and is usually equipped with the heaviest buffs for some IDs, So I recommend that if you have an identity you really like and it's pulling some heavy numbers, go ahead and get it up to level 4. So, Enkefallen starts out with a cap at 60. Once you start your adventure as the manager at level 1, the only way you can get Enkefallen, if you don't want to wait for it, is by throwing away Lunacy to regen it, or by getting Enkefallen boxes, which you can get via events or also via the battle pass. The other important thing is that you can turn 20 Enkefallen into Enkefallen modules, and the modules are important since they're the ones that you use to get into loot excavation stages and also dungeons in cantos. Normally dungeons are at the end of each canto, but that can change from time to time. So I feel conflicted about this mechanic. Since as an endgame player with mirror dungeons resetting every week, I get 750 lunacy a week, so 2 weeks is equal to 1500 lunacy, which is a temple. But from that I can use 20 sets and 52 lunacy to regen my total Enkefallen to its maximum. And because right now my manager level is at the point where I get 6 Enkefallen modules per maximum Enkefallen use, I don't really lose as much as I need. And keep in mind that to collect the rewards that the mirror dungeon gives you weekly, you have to spend 6 Enkefallen per bonus, and you have a total of 3 bonuses per week. So when you add everything up, at the end game, you're able to get more lunacy while maxing out getting thread and training tickets on top of doing mirror dungeon fully. What's the issue? At the start, you don't really know what to do, and you don't have the IDs to really max everything out and take every single advantage you can. But at the same time, I think that giving new players the choice might make them want to first grind for training tickets and thread, since it can be very important to max out your characters before going on to the mirror dungeon grinding. The problem is that a new player has, like I said, no idea what to do first, and with the limited Enkefallen, all I recommend is just continue the story, level up your characters, and enjoy the game. Once you're ready to grind, feel free to grind even if it is reaching the level cap before the next level cap unlock, which starts at the end of Canto 4 in-game. In this segment, I'll be explaining about the characters, so I can give you all a general story preview without spoiling the actual story. Just wanted to tell a bit of the world building, but for that I need to first present what the main cast is all about, once again without spoiling too much. So, you are the manager of a total of 12 sinners. Who are the sinners, you might ask? Outcasts that haven't really fit in any mold, and for one reason or the other have found themselves in Limbus Company. They work in the bus department branch of Limbus Company, and you are the manager of all of them, tasked with finding the golden bells for your company. You have a clock for a head, and not a defined gender. I'll be talking a bit about each of these sinners' personality in the order of their design number. So, here we go! Sinner number 1, Yisang. Poetic in a weird, sad way. Always talks in a cryptic manner that only serves for the rest of the sinners to groan about. Is getting more friendly and outgoing after Canto 4. He can get severely seasick. Sinner number 2, Faust. Talks in third person. She has brains for brains. She and Jisang build the bus your whole department travels in. Always aloof, always keeping information for herself. Each time one of the sinners asks her something important, she quite literally never responds. Sinner number 3, Don Quixote. Way too energetic, way too chivalrous, way too focused on justice and what is right or wrong. Also way too fixated on fitters, seeing them as pillars of what justice and being chivalrous means, helping the weak just because she's strong, which normally leads to things going wrong. Sinner number 4, Ryoshu. Artistic. In what way, you ask? She likes gore, as in guts. She will probably describe you the most vivid image of a homicide that even the worst criminals will be impressed about. She's a total and full chain smoker. She also has an otachi, which is basically a huge sword, one that she never gets out of its scabbard. Sinner number 5, Mersault. He's a brick wall, in both the literal and metaphorical sense. He will correctly count each second that has passed and not lose track of it. The most logical member of the crew, at least in his own way. He has a way too detailed routine and nothing seems to bother him. Pure stoicism. Sinner number 6, Hong Lu. Weirdly happy-go-lucky guy. Always mentions his rich family and sometimes talks about how weird his family can be. But he says it with a fully straight face, as if it is the most normal thing ever. Way too rich and seemingly way too out of touch. Sinner number 7, Heathcliff. Mad, angry, at literally everything or sometimes nothing. He's crude and violent, or at least he seems that way. Despite everything, he can sometimes manage to not get mad at Don Quixote for, well, being herself. Senior number 8, Ishmael. Calculating until she isn't. Normally goes for either sarcastic comments or biting comments said under her breath. She's impulsive, but can sometimes control herself. A whole spiral of different things. But as the manager, try to understand her as you would with the others. Senior number 9, Rodian. She's a lot. She likes gambling, as in competitive gambling. She also sometimes fails to see the way to her goal, or what even is her goal. That is where you as the manager have to come in and help her reach her goal. But for the other 90% of the time, she'll be trying to have fun and bring the crew to just chill out along, maybe with a game or so. Senior number 11, Sinclair. Easily scared despite being part of the LCB, which is the Limbus Company bus department. He still hasn't gotten quite used to the gore and general murder that happens each day at work, getting easily sick as just seeing it. But there are moments where he can grow and become more brave. Senior number 12, Otis. Highly responsible in a military way. She'll greet you and try to help you with whatever. Most of their seniors should say it is bootlicking though, because of your authority. She will sometimes calm down from what she thinks was best, letting you lead or letting you decide. And there will be moments where she will be impressed that you are actually a good manager. Senior number 13, Gregor, the other chainsmoker of the crew. His first notable trait is his buck arm, which is obvious at a first glance. But if you can ignore that and just look at him, he'll be an easygoing and nice guy. He will make good use of his knowledge about war and the pain and injustice that it brings. And finally, after all of that, senior number 10, you, the manager, Dante. Now, you don't quite really choose dialogue options like a visual novel, which is why it isn't really a visual novel, but you end up in the same place as Dante in the start, not knowing anything, having missing memories, and trying to herd a whole crew of misfits while you are the manager, being put in a position of power despite you having no idea how to do it. But don't worry, you will have the guide to lead you to the Golden Vows. Who's the guide? Virgilius, the Red Gaze, a color fritzer. Fatal, powerful, but won't help unless you are about to be killed. Oh, what's a Golden Vow, you ask? You don't need to know that, you just need to collect them. Now go ahead and have fun in your adventure. This world is way too violent, at least compared to other worlds, and it's also way too deep lore-wise, so I won't go into every single tiny bit of it, because there are YouTube videos that have done a way better job by people that have played all 3 games that Project Moon has made. But I'll explain a little, just to give you the context of why. There isn't really a name for the world, but the whole events of the game take place in what is called the city. At the moment that you have started acting as the manager, a lot of things have happened. First and foremost, your contract is to find all the Golden Vows scattered along all Lobotomy Corporation ruins, and send them to HQ. For what reason? You have no idea at all, and they won't tell you. The city is divided along 26 districts. Each one has a very different role and is really culturally different. A long time ago, a war happened, and it left its own problems. Then, Lobotomy Corporation imploded, and it made things even worse. But at least Lobotomy Corporation brought along Encaphalin, which is an energy resource that is way too good and is taken off of abnormalities, which I won't explain right now because that is a whole nother rabbit hole. Now, the head is what oversees the entirety of the city. They operate on A Corp, B Corp, and C Corp, which are located at the very center of the city. And yes, all districts are letters, from A to C. The head, despite being the big gun, only really acts when certain taboos happen. Basically, do something they don't agree with, and they will come hunt you down and kill you. Besides that, they make on, which is the currency of the city and such. And we have to talk about the wings. The wings are basically conglomerates that manage the nests of each district. In other words, nests are basically the capitals of each district, and where they use the resources to build a corporation, and given a singularity. Which a singularity is the whole point of why a wing is, well, a wing to begin with. Singularities are basically these powers that, well, are quite unique. There are singularities that manage to literally suck time in, or there are also singularities that make ampules that regen literal body parts in a matter of seconds. Nests are basically the only part of the district that a wing controls, and that is why they're mostly safe. But I wouldn't really count of that. After all, this world is really fucked. And profit to the higher-ups is better than equality for the working class. Quite literally. So that's why the backstreet exists. In each district there are the back streets, basically not the nest. Most of the poor people go there and they basically have no rights. I won't quite literally spoil some of the more important aspects of the world and the setting, because they're also explained in the other two games that Project Moon has made, which are Lobotomy Corporation and Library of Ruina, both of which, if you really end up liking Limbus Company, I recommend to just go ahead and buy them, since you can support the devs like that. Okay, so this is the part where I'll be really careful and walk around almost everything, since when I'm saying this, I mean it. From every single game I've played in my life, Limbus Company has one of the best stories I've ever had the pleasure of playing through. In fact, the only game that has got me this immersed before has been Dark Souls and Persona 5. So, hope you enjoy, as I'll be explaining the main plot of each canto, but I'll really be searching the word analyzing, since I'll just be spitting what I think that each canto has as a main topic and what some things mean for me. So I'll be talking about what I think of each canto, without spoilers, and giving you an idea of what I think it revolves around. Not lore-wise, since like I said previously, I'd rather leave that to the pros. I'll warn you all before that though. I'll rant a lot. But thankfully, due to me making the great and incredible decision of making a script, it'll hopefully be way more organized. And so, I mean, it's alright. You're gonna introduce to everyone before going onto your first hunt of getting one of the golden bows. That's about it. The first ever canto is, well, rough. After having played through the entirety of the game, I can only be honest and say that it's not really that great, but I think it sets up everything perfectly, and as much as it needs to, for starting the game. It's not that bad, even if it doesn't hold up when compared to later cantos. So I think that this first canto is mostly about the inability to change things, being too weak to do something you want to. As much as it can hurt and as hard as you can try, things can go the wrong way. But for that same reason, for the fact that you can't change fate, that is why you hold up yourself and see the future while holding your chin up. Now, the second canto does start pumping things up a little. The whole ambience and generally everything are starting to set up to what Limbus Company will be. Once again, it is rough around the edges, but I guess that's what counts with liking a game. Like, really liking a game. But either way, with what I think Canto 2 is about, it's mostly about facing your past. Well, sure, you can say, oh, but crap, isn't that a bit too similar to Canto 1? And I will say, yes, it is similar. In a certain way. But I mean it like really facing your past. Noticing how things have changed and how you might have changed too much as well. But you have to learn how to grow from that. Things are in full motion, and to be honest, for being the first boss fight with a song from Millie, it is peak. From all the characters being great, to how things play out. On top of the already great story and backgrounds, this is when Limbus Company gets more real. And I won't repeat that anymore since it will get way too long. Since I love literally every single canto. And back to the important stuff, what do I think about this canto? I think it has mostly to do with bravery, but even then it isn't the cliche type of bravery, I'd say. Even if you could connect the dots to that and say it is, I simply deny that. Simply because of the situation and how way too fucked up it is. So remember, even after the worst tragedies, you don't have to play by others' whim. Okay, so Canto 4 is not the best in my opinion, but it has a lot of useful lore and the rest though. But I don't really feel too much about it. Although, being honest, I found it to me not quite as hype, but the last moments were holy fucking peak. The scenario was set and it was epic. What do I think about it? It's mostly about learning that even if you haven't reached your full potential, even if you think that you're worthless for not being the best version of yourself, you are still you, after all of it. Big warning, bad and maybe hot take incoming. I am not a good person and you shouldn't take what I say as being necessarily the truth. I fucking love this canto. Now, I do have some thoughts about it, but it isn't about the canto, it's about, well, everything else surrounding it. Now, I won't go into this in detail, but I was a robots player, and I'll be honest, despite growing from it, the moment I saw a reference to it on Roblox, I felt like the most awful and dirty gatekeeper ever. And it is simply because I like this game way too much, that each type of thing without a context or just spitting random shit falls the wrong way with me. Because I feel like it's not validating how good the material actually is. And people in the outside would just be like, I guess it's another weirdo game and never try it. This is why I don't like these things, and I know I'm mostly 100% wrong since I haven't really interacted with this space, but what I will say is, if you feel strongly about something, don't simply say things that will make it sound like it's another game of the bunch. You can actually build on it, it's nice to meme around and such, but saying a thing or two that is just weird without context can be detrimental to the game getting the love it deserves. Okay, so I might have gone on a way too long rant, so what do I think this country is all about? Finding your way, and more than that, noticing what has been holding you down all along, what, even if you didn't realize, your life was around that. I fucking love this kanto! From every single tiny thing to this and that, it is simply so fucking good I want to die. Now, what I will say is, this is for me at least in top 1 with all the other kantos from now on. Yes, all of the kantos are in top 1. Every single one of them, no exceptions. Either way, I will restrain myself from spoiling, but please, if you have reached this point in the video, you are for 1, a madman, and for 2nd, interested at the very tiny least. Unless you have me in your second screen, in which case, hi strangers mom, your kid is... But still, just go play the game. What do I think is the theme about this one? Is understanding, love, how two people that are destined to be together can be broken apart by the littlest of mistakes. Peak, once again, pure peak cinema. From gameplay, which gets really good, but so just know that everything is set to 100. The emotions, the lore, and the story. It would get pretty tiring if I just said how much I love each kanto, so I'll go straight to the point. I think this kanto is about letting go. In what way? Waking up, realizing what you've lost, realizing what you've been ignoring and owning up to the mistakes you've done before, or those you've thought that you've done, and realizing where you belong. I have seen some people saying that they don't like this kanto that much, but I don't really see why it's that. I don't give my arguments as to why I think this kanto is good and as worth it as any other. This kanto is about humanity and privilege, and of note of that, it's about losing what you think is right or wrong because someone else telling you, or someone that you can't deny. Someone that despite all that you say, takes you less as a person and more of a tool. And yet, the human spirit. If you dare to go against everything you've been told, you can break the chains of those who've held you down, and show that yes, humanity is powerful, and that is why forfeiting it is stupid, because despite everything, you're still alive and you can still fight. Cry. Pain. Sadness. After finishing every single kanto, I felt like I hated Limbus Company. Obviously, in a sarcastic way. After all, this video is long, but this one, holy shit, it hurts. But it also has some of the best moments that I have been left utterly shell-shocked and impressed. On top of being like, way more shell-shocked, not even kidding, this kanto has some shit. It's also hype as fuck, in the literal greatest sense. And finally, I think the theme, story-wise, of this kanto is some of the hardest hitting things that Project Moon could have done. From messing up, to not believing you're enough, to thinking you're worthless, and while I would say what I have been repeating over and over again, since I'm a bad writer and not funny, but despite being surrounded by the worst of people, you're not bound to them, and you're not bound by those you love. As of the making of this video, there are no more kantos out yet, because Kanto 10 was announced in a livestream. I haven't talked about intervalos, since it would be way harder to not talk about them without spoilers, and it would make this video longer than it needs to be. But that's where I'll leave it for now. The game is great, and it deserves any kind of recognition it could have. I admit, I'm not a good person from wanting to kind of gatekeep this game, and literally anything I could say would seem like an excuse, so all I'll say is, if you enjoy something, cherish it, talk about it, say what you love about it. The world is going through what seems to be not being able to have media literacy, because you're looking way too hard into things that are just fiction. But I'm being honest when I say this. Some stories can change you, and make you understand not only more about us, but about you as well. I can't give enough props to Project Moon for making 3 games that even if they are sometimes some of the hardest things I've played, they're still filled with so much soul and love. And I know I've plugged them way too much, but really, go to Steam and play Limbus Company. And if not, it's also on the Play Store. Yet, this is where we depart. So until next time, or until next stream if you watch me stream live here on YouTube, I hope to see you, manager. This has been Why I Love Limbus Company. P.S. Oh, I forgot. I have made a cover of one of Millis' song, which, if you didn't know, are the band that is making the final boss music for Limbus. If you fear spoilers, please leave right now. And for the ones who stay, just hope I don't sing like pure shit, Lamau. How much I wished for another, better, happier, brighter future. Here I am at the gate I stand. Dear old times, I've made up my mind. How much you must have suffered. Look, you wonder, vulgar, forward, awkward, sincere, composure, manners. Here we are at the fated land. I shall match me then. Oh, round and round we go, holding on to pain, driven by our egos, feelings untold, spinning our own versions of the past that you could never know. 'Cause I know I must be the reason why you have given up your smiles, and the hope inside your eyes has been stolen. I must be the reason why you must tell me all these lies, wishing you a better life without me by your side. The message is already been said, the patches of violet. How much we must have diverged. Hello, good night, goodbye, hello, good night, I'm here, goodbye, waiting, here we are, it's a final chance. With your hand the work must be done. Delete, 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 delete. Oh, round and round we go, holding on to pain, driven by our egos, feelings untold, spinning our own versions of the past that you could never know. How would I know I could be the reason why you were able to be kind, and the hearts we held so tight won't stay broken. Love must be the reason why I still believe in this lie, that you live a better life without me by your side. The message is already been said, the patches of violet. So this is the actual end of the video. Sorry for making you guys have to go through my horrible singing skills, but either way, I just wanted to end this up by saying I love this fucking game too much, maybe a little too much for my own health, but it is still a video that I wanted to make, even if it is my first one. And please go check all the links I'm gonna put below, because I put all the songs that I use for background music, I put all the info where I got it from, and that should be about it. Bye bye guys, it was a great video, and see you next time.